Libyan officials say that the body of Muammar Gadhafi was buried in a secret location at dawn this morning. The interim government has promised an investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death, a task that certainly will be a lot more difficult now. NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel joins us now from New York. Richard, the interim government has to prove its bona fides, and there are a lot of human rights questions being asked about prisoners and about the way they handle all of this. But is it really sort of a moot point at this stage?
It's a non-starter.
Yeah.
This investigation isn't going to go anywhere. I think everyone knows by now how Gadhafi died, that he was killed by the rebels after he was captured alive. There were many calls for investigations after the Libyan rebels were killing what they called mercenaries, and these were sub-Saharan Africans, black Africans, who were working in Tripoli and other places. Some of them were mercenaries and some of them were not. They were just workers who got caught up in the fighting, and some of them were massacred. I remember seeing mass graves and bodies dumped in the streets myself. I don't know if they were actual mercenaries or just sub-Saharan workers, but they were definitely people who were bound and executed, and yet the new government has not investigated those allegations, and seems very unlikely it's going to be investigating Gadhafi's death either, or at least not investigating it very seriously.
How difficult is it going to be to create rule of law, to create a justice system, civil society, to say nothing of free and fair elections?
Oddly enough, on the ground, there is a degree of rule of law. There has not been looting on the street. Markets are open. Society functions as normal, but there is not really a government. You have each city administering its own affairs, and the people of Misrata are very loyal to Misrata and their role in the revolution, and the same is true in Zintan. But there's not the kind of bloodletting and chaos that we saw in places like Baghdad. What they're going to need to do now, and starting now, is to form a truly national government and hold elections, and they say that's supposed to take place over the next 8 months.
And Richard, what about the inspiration to the dissidents in Syria? They are now asking for protection, but there really was an immediate reaction after Gadhafi was found and killed, that this could inspire the revolt against Bashar al-Assad.
They started on the streets across Syria. Dissidents started chanting in favor of the rebels in Libya, and they were using some of the same slogans in Syria that the rebels were using in Libya. And they said, Bashar al-Assad, you are next. Watch what happened to Gadhafi. And I think what's important to notice, what's happened over the last few days, which isn't getting as much attention, is this diplomatic problems, after the United States pulled out Ambassador Robert Ford, and then the Syrians did the same thing, effectively withdrawing their ambassador to Washington for consultations. This is an escalation, and because Ambassador Ford was such a dynamic figure. He was seen as a hero on the ground to many in the opposition in Syria. He went out personally, drove to the protests, drove to the funerals for some of the activists, didn't tell the Syrian authorities where he was going, didn't ask their permission, which the Syrian authorities have not been giving to foreign diplomats, and just went. And there is one famous picture when the ambassador arrived at a demonstration, and the protesters came out and lifted up his car and were carrying flowers and olive branches and gave him a very warm welcome. So his being pulled back is a blow for them.
That's a blow, and he's been, the administration has been saying this is why we had him there, to be the link to the dissidents, telling conservatives, critics on the Hill, that they weren't being accommodationist to the Assad government. To the contrary, but he was a real hero, and they say that they pulled him out because of threats, personal threats to his safety from the regime, and that they're not withdrawing him, which would mean cutting relations.
Exactly, that there were specific threats to his physical safety, and his convoy was attacked once, his residence was attacked, the embassy was attacked, mostly because of the ambassador's personal profile. Not only did he go out and visit dissidents, he also was kept posting messages in favor of the opposition on his Facebook page. And I would assume that the embassy was getting specific threats regarding his safety.
Thank you so much, Richard Engel. He's a real hero and a real example of what
Arabic
diplomats can do.
speaker, inspired a lot of people in Syria, and a lot of people said that is what the United States should be doing, that he personally improved the image of the United States in Syria much more than a lot of our efforts out of Washington.
Indeed. Thank you. Thanks, Richard. Great to see you. Thanks for being here.